Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate your join. I realise I'm standing between you and drinks, so I do appreciate you coming across there. What I actually want to cover today is essentially this, the process of, if the slides move. There we go, thank you. So slides move. What I actually want to cover going through today is this evolution as we've gone through, where we've had these compelling events that have occurred, these inflection points as it were, and as each one of these have come along, it's sort of added more and more complexity on top of the environment we faced ourselves in. So we started off with a foundational one from the internet perspective, where we allowed, we suddenly had all this access to sort of more bandwidth, and we started to do that. This led to other things. We had these, the cloud infrastructure came in place, the compute infrastructure on top of there, allowed us to go to mobility, and now we've reached this point where we have AI involved as well. So to that point, we've now started to add all these sort of things on top. We've had this, and I'm very old. I've started in this business many years ago where it was very simple from a mainframe perspective, effectively, where we had sort of internet connections, network connections where it's sort of end to end. Very simple. I learned the protocols very easily because they're very simple things. What we've done now is added these different steps on top. So when we talk about added complexity, it's actually added these complexities on top of complexities and dependencies themselves. What that's meant essentially is that if we're starting to add these together, these signals effectively can clash now. But now we've got this point where we have this multitude of alerts, and some of them might not be valid, some of them might be there, so we get this alert fatigue. If we now start to put AI on top of this, it's actually doing a sort of a number of different things. And we've had one Fortune 50 company who estimates it's going to be sort of 3 times the amount of alerts they're getting. And how do you sort of separate the noise from the chaff, as it were, on there? I also realised AI is very hard to say with my accent. So the other things that come on top of that then is we're thinking about the performance we have. So the expectations have changed. Again, when we started in this business, there used to be this thing, if I'm going to a website, I've had 8 seconds, took 8 seconds for a page to load, then that was effectively too long and you go somewhere else. That's actually come down sort of a lot now, but now we start to put on these digital citizens, these AI agents themselves, their requirements are sort of far less in terms of the response they need to have. So we have those things, we have different set of requirements, different set of expectations. And on top of all of this, then we have effectively, because we have these large systems, they're growing, we've got more stuff. From a Gartner report there, they sort of, organizations think they're going to have sort of a 64% sort of skill shortage around there. This doesn't mean that we're getting dumber, it means that there's more to do. So we're constantly getting this firefighting where we can't get onto these, this continuous improvement model, which will allow us to sort of move the business forward and get across there. Now, if we try to do this as we've always done it, because this is the way we've done it, we operate in silos, we have these different systems around there. We talk about this pivoting, and if we pivot in context or we do a swivel chair type scenario and just set up in one system, it's actually not possible to keep up. The magnitude of all the systems we got involved there don't allow us to actually do that. We can't possibly go through these. Even with the best machine learning algorithms and AI on top of this, we don't have the capability to do that. Now, in speaking to the customers, what we've actually sort of identified is this ability from a unification perspective. So this is effectively sort of simplifying this aspect, not just on the putting the two systems together or doing that, but unifying it right across the board. So from a management perspective, from a licensing, so I'm not having to do thousands of bits of paper, I'm actually buying a solution as opposed to individual elements there as well. But then also from a hardware point of view, I don't need to go through this rig model if I actually want to do. Alongside of that, we have this idea of the capability to operate this system at the same time. So we have all this hardware, we have this unification at a platform level, unification across there. What can we do to make this simple? So on top of this, we have these various ways from an AI ops or an operational perspective. So starting off with there, talking about AI assistant, where we can have this common language format, where you can ask questions, and now because you're looking across the entire infrastructure you have there, you're asking it questions around that system, but also to guide you with workflows. I need to deploy this, this security policy. I need to do a migration from this hardware there, and actually sort of takes out those different steps. It's not that a human's not capable of doing this, it's because all these are sort of spread across these multiple systems. I need to take in this consideration with this consideration. With this concept of troubleshooting, what I actually need to sort of identify and troubleshoot across this area. So I have the AI canvas. So within the various solutions from a Cisco perspective, there's all various opinions and contextualized information. Now, if I'm looking at from a persona, I need to have this holistic stuff joined together. I want to be able to bring all these things in. So this is where we're looking at AI Canvas. So this is this ability. It's a generative UI where we can actually start to ask the questions aided by AI assistant, and it can say, you need to look here, you need to do a packet capture, and let me go and get the information from ThousandEyes. Let me show you the path view. What we actually need to do is to get this part of information and put it across this canvas so you can actually understand and automatically troubleshoot and work your way through that scenario. Underpinning all of these, again, I'm very old, garbage in, garbage out. If our base data, our model itself, or what we've actually taught this model is fundamentally flawed, then we're going to get the wrong results. And the worst possible thing from all this is you're therefore not going to be able to trust it. So our models themselves are they're purpose-built specifically for our environment. We are experts in what we do across the whole domain there. So we have those areas there. We've used this information to train the model on these networking capabilities. It's also been trained on the Cisco U courseware, as well as the experts, the distinguished engineers, the CCIEs within Cisco to sort of have these Q&A, these FAQs sort of put in there, as well as these real-world troubleshooting scenarios where we've actually put those in. And I'll give you some examples as we go through from there. What this ultimately means is we can improve the accuracy of the responses we're going to get. So you therefore build up that trust relationship and then be able to sort of move forward essentially in what we're actually doing to this full automation. Because if we have these capabilities where you're able to understand and troubleshoot what's going on, then you see the patterns that are happening and you get to this continuous improvement where you're actually making the change before something is actually going to fail. So therefore then you're avoiding the situation occurring. Part of this when we talk about this is actually having the right information in the context which I actually need to do that. If I'm setting up an environment, I don't want to have to jump from one console to another. Even if it is, I can go a single login, I can log from here to there. So what we've actually done is we started to unify this experience themselves. So from a unified network management perspective, so single sign-on, we can cross-launch between the platforms to give you a holistic global visibility into your whole alert summary. Right, so this approach allows for these integrations to feed this AI-powered automation because we can see this across hybrid environments. We can streamline the management process and ultimately enhance the efficiency that you have. We're expanding this across sort of the portfolio themselves. So we're bringing this to the full Cisco networking portfolio. So across Meraki, the Catalyst, and the next generation of switches, routers, and access points. Today, with the 9200 and 9500 series support this cloud-native management, and then we're going to introduce that and sort of increase that as we go forward. One of the key elements of all this, again, is security itself. So embedding this security, again, I want to do this in the workflow that I'm familiar with. So I want to be able to sort of have this capability to do it within the platform or the context that I'm actually used to. So we can start to do that. So again, so this is powered by Cisco ICE. It is optimized for Meraki, and it's actually delivered as a SaaS access manager. And it allows you then to sort of deploy identity-based access control and across the Meraki network in one go again, without having to jump from one to the other. Now, the relevance of seeing each one of those in the context means that I can actually less capable of making these errors, but also I can actually do it quickly, more efficiently, coming back to this skill basis. Now, we've talked about looking at this from an agent perspective of actually looking at it from an AI and sort of working on these systems themselves. Now, but we've actually come right out. We talk about AI and NetOps. It's easy just to think of a single dashboard, sort of running reports, surfacing errors, anomalies, that type of thing. But if we can actually embed that or bake that into every layer of the network, then we can really start to interact those things together and have that overall system there. It really starts to become a game changer. One of the good things, and this whole concept, and we could talk for hours about the agentic stuff and what it means to different people around there. But essentially, if we can take this agentic workflow, and we can now start to sort of build that into the processes that we've actually got. So we can actually natively build this. We currently have this available with the Meraki dashboard, and this allows for the automation, the easy automation itself. So we've also built this into the AI assistant. So again, it's enabling this agentic ops situation itself, where we can start to increase these things and sort of bring the stuff together. Now, currently these workflows are available across the domain. So we have them in Meraki, the SD-WAN manager, the ICE, and the Nexus, and we're looking to add more as we go forward. If I'm thinking about resolving the issues again, we have this huge data field out there, all these complex data we actually need to see. We need to be able to understand that. Again, if I'm a human going through this data, I need to look at this one, and I need to come think about it from a pen test. I need to go a parallel process to look from there. So what we've done is added this intelligence from an AI perspective to do that. So again, this is actually looking at a particular feature. This is the AI packet analyzer built into to Meraki there, which allows us to sort of capture and view that data across the board. Now, this is just one element. So if I think about looking at the infrastructure from a local area, then I need to sort of come right across my environment. We have many hotspots across there. So the point of this is I actually need to be able to deliver multi-layered assurance, be that from the client itself, right through the various elements, through my security aspects, as well as into the applications or the cloud hosted provider where it actually sits. Again, to do this, I want to do this in the context to which I'm actually trying to look at that. So if I'm looking for Meraki dashboard, I have various capabilities in there. I want to be able to bring the ThousandEyes data into the Meraki assurance so I can see it alongside each other. So I'm not, again, looking, even if I'm pivoting context, now I want to be able to see what is the impact of that as it lies across the other. And we've then done this essentially across the board. So if I'm looking at this from a visibility perspective to sort of try and increase this, I'm starting to take the telemetry where it makes sense and bring that into the overall story where I can actually add all those things in together. So if I'm actually looking at this from the end, from I was going to say the customer side, from the branch or the edge perspective, there's NetFlow available information to me. And I want to put that together with the ThousandEyes data synthetics to be able to see that from an attribution perspective. We talked about early on this inflection point with the mobile stuff around there. I have my distributed users sitting on top of that. I need to see what they're doing because it's the end user experience itself. And then if we start to extend that into industrial IoT, I want to be able to see that from a vantage point and bring all that system together. If I want to extend that into the other end as well, so now I'm going into the application itself. The cloud providers are AWS and Azure. I want to be able to see into that, but I don't necessarily need to replicate the data I've got. I want to see that data in the context of my applications or my end user experience that I'm putting from there. All of this is then about attribution. And then the same, I've actually identified there's a problem. We've gone through this, and we see there's a problem in the back-end system. So I want to be able to see that from a distributed tracing perspective. I want to be able to key off my synthetic. This is where I see, and sort of go into that point and drill down to there. Then if I'm looking at that from the overall, we're coming back to sort of put those all together. So I want to see my environment in one area where I'm actually looking in context from my system of what I'm used to, my workflow, the syntax I'm familiar with itself. And this is where we start to sort of bring all that together. Now, just as a sort of a quick view of this, and I apologize for the blurriness, this is an example of some of the AI stuff we've got in here. So this is a thing called views explainability. This is using a reasoning engine. It's going through some of the expert systems where we go through that prompt, and she goes through this process and actually starts to go and analyze it through those layers. So you don't need to be an expert of where you're looking at this data. What this is doing is actually going through and understanding what's happening and doing analysis on it to give the fault domain. So this is faster resolution. This is helping with that skills gap, but it's also ability to upskill the users. Because now when I actually see that process again, I can actually go through and see that. Now from an optimization perspective, I can actually now look at that in contrast to a different time. What does it look like when it was good? This one is like bad. Now I don't need to understand the difference between BGP or a page load time or a 429 error. I can actually do that, compare and bring those together. Taking that then into the back-end system itself, I've identified this particular problem, and therefore then I want to see what's happening within that system. I want to be able to go into that back-end system to understand specifically where that problem was. So from here then, okay, I've looked at this, I can see the problem, let me look at the network path. I see the network path, there's no problems on there, there's no loss rate or anything like that. Now I want to be able to go further into that system, and I want to drill into it. So from here then I can actually go into the specific information. I've seen, again, I'm not looking at that detail within ThousandEyes, I just need to know that this is where that problem is, and that is then handed off specific to where that issue is in that back-end system. So that was a kind of a whirlwind tour of bringing this simplification together. What I want to do now is to bring Dan on stage, and we're going to sort of just cover off what this looks like from a real-world scenario as opposed to my theoretical world. Thanks, Dan.
No worries.
Okay, so thanks for joining me here today, Dan. And
no
just for that, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and then lead into sort of specifically the customer you're looking at and the landscape of that environment?
Sure. So my name is Daniel Tam. I'm an account manager from AC3. So I sit within our Cisco Splunk practice. So we are a Cisco Gold partner as well as an elite partner with Splunk. Part of what we do is really acting as that trusted advisor to not only go deep on each of the Cisco solutions, but we also go across. So we help with the integrations with the external solutions like ServiceNow and really closing that loop on the full application lifecycle. The customer we're going to talk about today is HCF. So I've looked after HCF for about 7 years now. So HCF, for those who don't know, is the largest not-for-profit insurance provider within Australia. They have 2 million plus members. They are a very customer member experience focused organisation. 89 cents of their every dollar goes back towards their members in benefits. Mm-hmm. So it's a very driven upon, for them, their customer experience.
So it's all around customer experience itself. So
that's right.
That's the benchmark which they're going to judge things forward there. So in that context then, when we think about, I've been going on and rattling on about unification and those types of things, what essentially does that mean in that environment and what does it mean to you?
So from a technology perspective within HCF, they have a mix of, they have data centers that are on-prem, they have cloud across AWS and Azure, they have 54 branches, as well as they have dental centers, they have call centers. From an IT perspective, the customers are not only the members themselves, but they're actually internal with the corporate as well as the branch users. And each of those play a good role in that. From our perspective of how we help HCF, so they have been a long-standing partner across multiple solutions across the Cisco portfolio. So in particular, they have Splunk ITSI, they have Ollie Cloud, they have ThousandEyes, App Dynamics, and then they have, on the networking front, expanding on that, they have SD-WAN, they have ICE, they have a bunch of other ones that Catalyst as well to bring that all together. So we really use all of those platforms, and really it's built on Splunk being that unified platform to bring in all those solutions. So that's one of the big things that we're trying to drive at HCF, is having that unified platform.
So that unification, sort of bringing things together there. Again, we've talked about the concept of the end user being king in this area there. So when you think about that, is that because then from a Splunk perspective, that is the best way for the personas that are using it, so I can actually have that data in context coming in?
Yeah, so from a Splunk perspective, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how they ingest it. If it's human readable, we can pull it in. It doesn't have to be a Cisco solution specifically, whether it's metrics, events, logs, traces. It's all about bringing it in and then ask the data, ingest it once, ask it many questions. So depending on whether that be a security lens or an observability lens, or if you look at it from a capability, whether it's network, infrastructure, application, we want to have it all in the same platform so that teams are using the same data, and we're removing some of those silos and the efficiency from a timing perspective, because often what would happen before, like you mentioned, is the swivel chair where teams would have to spend, they would go away, they'd go into their war room, everyone would come back with what the data they found, and then there would be a lot of manual integration, as well as the mean time to innocence that we talk about, rather than the mean time to repair. That side of thing is a big thing that we're trying to drive that culture. Because ultimately, if the technology can do it, it's the people and process that are going to come with it as well.
Absolutely. So then on that, just drilling down into that a little bit more, so we're the fact then we have this unification also allows you to effectively talk from a single source of truth. I mean, you said about the silos. People often talk about breaking down the silos, but if we're communicating across them from a single source of truth, that effectively makes things easier.
That's right. And what we're trying, one of the big things that we're doing now as how we roll out Splunk is it's very much, we want monitoring on everything, but we're trying to focus on a very much a top-down approach. So we're trying to use Splunk as the platform itself, but we're really driving with ITSI, which is the IT Service Intelligence, and that's really how we're going to bring in the business side of things. So we're looking to implement based on your core business workflows. So we're bringing that in from a top-down, and we're trying to prioritize those, and organically that will bring in how we monitor each of the underlying components. If we think about one of the core applications within HCF is their claims application.
Yep.
So that's got front doors from the call centers, that front from the mobile application, the website, as well as going into a physical branch. Each of those to make a claim ultimately means money, and if we can't make a claim, then the business gets involved. But they all come within one application. However, there's many avenues to actually do that. So we want to know if is the call center having problems that we can't get to that from an IT perspective? Is the application having problems? How widespread is it? And is there a performance issue? And all those things. And we want to have that within a dashboard. So we have that within ITSR. And ideally what we can then do is the 3 clicks to triage. So we want to democratize your data. We want to have views for the executives. We want to have views for the technical SMEs. We want to have a view for the service owner. There is a claims provider owner, but then underlying that, we might have the external third-party calls. We might have the networking. All of that comes together. Splunk is really the cornerstone of that, but things like ThousandEyes provide that assurance to see from the external networks as well as to the branch networks. We're bringing that all together. So ultimately what happens is that team can now, we can know where it's read quickly, we can see the dependency mapping, and we can actually go to that team.
So there's a couple of interesting points you've brought up there. So you talked about the service has been made up of multiple applications or multiple protocols around there, which is, I think, is a really critical point. You know, we're constantly talking about how we're going to pass packets or those types of things, and this is also part of that unification.
That's right.
Your customers, or the customers don't think about that. They're thinking about, I want to make a claim. So there's other services over there. And then you went through this triage process. So is there anything, or what do you do in terms of like proactive? Because again, the analogy I always use is if I'm going to make a phone call, again, show my age, I'm going to make a phone call and I pick up the phone.
This way.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no dial tone, I can't make a call to complain. So it's that, how do you do that proactive aspect, or is it something you consider?
Ideally, what we're trying to do is leverage things like AI ops and get that predictive analytics coming in. So the more data that we can feed it, we can get to understand, and we want to get ahead of the curve. So ideally, we don't get those calls. We don't want to be sitting in that reactive nature. A lot of what was the journey that we've had with HCF is that it was traditionally a very reactive, and in like most days, it was when we first put Splunk in, it was let's just cover the infrastructure, and that was it. And then we've slowly integrated a bit on top of that. Once that's all the technology is now there, we're now just starting to feed it and bring the business along the journey, so that once data, we start to understand patterns, we understand the business workflow, we are now implementing that. That's when we get that proactiveness. And now we have the data, what do we do with it? That's the next step. So we're looking to close that loop, I guess, now we see the monitoring, we're going to integrate with ServiceNow, integrate with the CMDB, so that not only are we raising the incident, we're actually automating that incident to the appropriate work group so that they know what to do based on the KPIs and the learnings.
So you're effectively, I mean, it's a great way to start, and it's a beautiful story coming through. We started here, let's clear the wood, see the trees.
That's right.
So, and then you've built on that. So in theory, you've now got that baseline. So this allows you effectively to start to move into that continuous improvement model.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to implement that and do the shift left and become more proactive. And ideally what that will mean is that we're allowing less time for the firefighting, more time for innovation and actually doing that forward looking. How do we improve that member experience rather than just constantly sitting in that reactive mode and firefighting?
Yeah, so on that point then, not necessarily specific to a customer, but just your deep expertise in this ops area and that type of thing, how do you see the automated orchestration, the effect of AI intelligence to sort of do remediation. How much of a factor do you see that helping you going forward?
AI is a big thing. I mean, it'd be naive to think, I think if you haven't been here for the last 2 days, you probably haven't noticed AI, but I think AI is very much here. There are a lot of different facets to AI. AI can be great. It's very good at identifying those emerging patterns, helping to do that triage. And it can also help, you talked about AI Assistant, it helps with the adoption and getting people on board to the platform. I think ultimately where this will come down of how businesses actually use AI is we need to start from the top. What's your overall objective? What do you want to do? And then we start to, AI will sort of happen for itself. What we don't want to do is just doing AI for the sake of AI.
Yep.
And ultimately that's what will probably catch people out, is that not having some sort of strategy around that. But AI is all about data, and the more data we feed it, there's a lot of data to us to work through manually, but AI can help us with that to get to the problem faster.
So basically, again, like you've gone for that process when you're talking about building up from the base and doing that, effectively, you're saying the same. You've got to that, you know your outcome before you started.
Yeah. Not
what it's going to be, but you know what you want to achieve, and that's the kind of thing we're talking about there.
Yes, and that, I mean, whether observability, assurance, ultimately we want to have a set objective of where we want to go to and where we want to get to, and that creates the strategy rather than just starting at a point solution and working backwards. You want to start from the top and get that lens down, and then that's ultimately where we've seen success.
I think that's another interesting one there as well. I mean, and again, just your personal opinion here, is that when I talk to a customer, they're not buying observability or assurance, they're buying an experience or a customer experience or a seamless experience.
That's right. Ultimately, particularly where we come in is that as a partner, is what is the outcome you want to achieve? We'll help you with the solution, and we can tell you the different tooling. And often what we have from an AC3 in our experience is that customers have all these tools and they're not really sure how to get the best value out of it. And they all will tell you that we can do observability, we can all do AI, and it's a matter of the first thing we actually start is what do you want to achieve and what's the outcome, and then we'll tell you where the best way is to and then we can help streamline each of those solutions together.
That's very good. I could talk to you all day, Dan, actually there, but I noticed we're sort of running on time. So just to summarize that, if there was one capability that you say is non-negotiable for managing like the model infrastructure, what would it be? What would be your takeaway thought?
I think the foundation for us in our learnings in recent years has been very much unifying your visibility, unifying into a platform, democratizing your data and removing that initial foundation. And then that really drives that operational efficiency, that sets your foundation for the automation, that sets your foundation for a lot of those objectives that we talked about today. But if you can bring all the data together and get everybody talking on that same language, and then if you also have that clear objective, that's your first initial step, and then it's how do we drive that further and roll it out. And also start with a phased approach. Don't go big bang. It's often people want return on value quicker. So
very good. Well, thanks so much, Dan. I really appreciate that.
No worries.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. So, just to kind of wrap up there, what sort of Dan said, really, the thing for us is, I'm sorry, I thought it was over. So, that unifying, that experience coming together. As Dan said, it's really about bringing all those, starting with that foundation, sort of coming out. We can't boil the ocean, but let's start to bring those things together to simplify that process to sort of those AI ops or that automation, that process is together there. They're not there for the sake of it. As I said, AI is very hard for me to say. I also sound like I'm saying a nursery rhyme, but it's sort of bringing that together. Use it specifically. Don't be afraid of it, but use it in the context we actually want to go. I'm going to be around for sort of questions there as well, but we also have various stands where this unification, this demonstrations there, all in the world of solutions, the various Cisco's, the AI data centers, the future-proof workplaces. Please come up and speak to us, and thank you very much for your time.